Hello my friends! Today we will take a look at a very interesting proposition for Sony full-frame E-mount users, the Tamron 28-75mm F2.8 Di3 RXD. This lens features completely new optical design, it is made specifically for mirrorless cameras, and it is quite unique compromise between the size, focal range, aperture and also the price, because this lens costs just $799. So let's take a look at how it comes together. Instead of the usual 24-70mm focal range, Tamron has decided to go with 28-75mm, which means that you lose 4mm on the wide end. The difference between 24 and 28mm focal length is quite significant. On the other hand, thanks to the sacrifice is the Tamron 28-75mm tiny in comparison with Sony 24-70mm f2.8 GM lens, and it also weighs just 550 grams compared to 886 grams of the GM 24-70mm f2.8. The build quality on this lens is quite good. It is made of plastics, but it feels quite solid. Nothing moves inside of the lens. The surface finishing also looks nice. I also like very simple design of the new Tamron lenses and the white text. I can't really say that it feels particularly premium, but overall the build quality is completely fine. The mount is metal, of course. That beige ring is metal as well. It looks good, but it doesn't match Sony's orange ring very well in my opinion. This lens is weather sealed, so there is a rubber gasket around the mount as well. The lens hood is included with the lens, and it is quite short and compact. The filter size is 67mm, which is very common diameter, so chances are that you will already have some filters for this lens. Regarding the control elements, there is only the zoom ring and the focusing ring. This lens is not image stabilized, so there is obviously no switch for that, and if you want to switch from autofocus to manual focus, you need to use the menu. But the absence of AF/MF switch also contributes to the compact size of this lens, so I am okay with that. On my brand new copy, the zoom ring has a lot of resistance, and you can feel the friction between the plastic barrel and the inner parts of the lens. So it is not the smoothest zoom ring that I've ever tested, but the resistance is even, so it is not as bad overall, and hopefully it will get better over the time. This lens uses focus by wire system. The focusing ring is completely smooth, although there is reasonable amount of resistance, which gives it some feel, and the focusing ring is sensitive to both turning distance and turning speed. Whether you like it or not is a matter of preference, but it enables you to get from close to far focus distance very quickly. Overall, it is one of the better focus by wire systems. And now let's take a look at the image quality and optical characteristics of this lens. I will be testing it with 24 megapixel sensor in Sony A7 III. In terms of sharpness, at 28mm, the sharpness in the center of the frame is already very good at f2.8, and the corner sharpness is actually very solid as well. Also, the contrast is already very good here. Stopped down to f4, the sharpness is excellent in the center of the frame, and the corners are now very sharp as well. The sharpness further increases at f5.6, both in the center and in the corners, and the contrast is now great as well. f8 is the sharpest point across the frame, and at f8 the overall sharpness is superb across the frame, even a tiny bit better than at f5.6. The diffraction starts at f11, but it is very subtle, so if you need to use f11, you can definitely do so. At 35mm the performance is very similar. The sharpest point is still f8, but even wide open at f2.8 the sharpness is very good. It is definitely much more than usable, and the sharpness is excellent already at f4, and the contrast is really good as well. It is the same story at 50mm, but the corner sharpness decreases a bit as you zoom in, but it is still very good. And at 75mm the sharpness is still very good, although the contrast seems to decrease just a bit. But overall, I have to say that I am very happy with the optical performance of this lens in terms of sharpness. It is more than usable wide open. From f4 the sharpness is generally very good. From f5.6 the sharpness is great. It gets just a bit softer towards the long end, but for the real world usage the sharpness is very good. Please note that I have tested this lens with 24 megapixel full frame sensor with relatively low pixel density, so if you will test it with 42 megapixel sensor, the results may be different. As I have said, the contrast is very good, and I also really like the color reproduction. That may be partially caused by improved color science in Sony A7 Mark III, but the colors look good to me and I don't see any unnatural tint. Regarding the chromatic aberration and vignetting, I have shot these samples with in-camera corrections because it is 2018 and in my opinion it is okay if manufacturers take an advantage of these technologies, and with corrections there is very little chromatic aberration even when shooting wide open, and the vignetting is corrected as well. Yes, if you turn it off there will be a lot of distortion and vignetting at wide angle, but for me the important is the result, and that is very good after the correction. The rendition of autofocus background is in my opinion very pleasant as well. It has 9 aperture blades. At f2.8 you can achieve very shallow depth of field for that full frame look, especially towards the long end of the focal range. What I also really like about the Tamron 28-75 is the minimal focus distance. The minimal focus distance is just 19 centimeters at the wide end and 39 centimeters at the long end, so it is very good semi-macro lens and it is ideal for shooting things like wristwatches. So it will also be my main lens for shooting wristwatch reviews on my second channel. I will leave a link in the description if anybody is interested. And if you mount it on APS-C body like Sony A6500, it is even quite suitable for shooting things like butterflies. Regarding the autofocus, first of all I have to address the firmware issue where the autofocus gets stuck. It happened to me exactly one time on the first day that I owned this lens. After I restarted the camera, everything worked just fine, and Tamron will release firmware update in a couple of days. Other than that, I am very happy with the autofocus. It works like on Sony lenses, it is very fast and very accurate. With no hunting, it is just like well-focusing Sony lens combined with excellent autofocus system in A7 Mark III or A9, so no complaints here. In the video, the autofocus is great as well, fast and accurate, without hunting, but just like with any other lens, make sure that you are in the right focus mode, depending on whether you want the fastest possible autofocus or you want smooth autofocus. Speaking of the video, Tamron 28-75 is actually a very good lens for shooting video as well. And one of the reasons for that is that according to my test, it is parafocal, which means that the focus point is not changing as you zoom in or out, so you can do zoom ins in the video while using manual focus. The second reason why this is very good video lens is that the autofocus is very silent, the focusing noise is absolutely minimal, and it definitely won't be picked up by in-camera microphone or by shotgun mic. It is not image stabilized though, which could be useful for handheld shooting, but the in-body image stabilization in A7 Mark III seems to be more useful than I thought that it will be. Tamron 28-75mm F2.8 Di3 RXD actually reminds me a bit of my favorite lens for crop sensors, the Sigma 18-35mm F1.8, which was a big strength of all APS-C systems. And the Tamron 28-75 is kind of like a full-frame version of that lens, but it is smaller, it doesn't require adapter to be used on mirrorless cameras. Unlike the 18-35mm f1.8, it has completely silent autofocus, longer reach, and it is also a very important lens for the whole Sony FE system, because it is relatively cheap way to get excellent all-around lens with bright aperture, excellent optical qualities and compact size that will enable you to use full potential of your Sony full-frame camera. I do miss those 4mm on the wide end, but I guess that it is not possible to have everything in one lens, and the Tamron 28-75mm f2.8 Di3 RXD is an excellent compromise overall. So that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. I hope that you liked this video and that you have found it to be useful. Stay tuned for more videos and maybe consider subscribing if you don't want to miss my future content. I appreciate your feedback in form of thumbs up or thumbs down. If you'd like to ask anything or share opinion, please do so in the comment section, and see you next time.